Is this Hanicha the Rebbe Meir?
We're supposed to be on Hey Moshe's on the bottom, about 5-6 lines from the bottom.
On when? Marav?
Shurim.
Shiurin, 6 lines from the bottom, Shiurin. So yesterday
Shiurin.
the Gemara spoke. Yes, yesterday the Gemara spoke about how do we know the halacha that the schach has to be 10 tefachim off the ground, and also mechitza have to be 10 tefachim high. And the Gemara said, according to our mayor, that says that Amma 6 tefachim, we could figure it out from the Aron B'Kaporos plus 10 tefachim, and that would tell us that the mechitza has to be 10 tefachim, and as far as the height of the schach has to be 10 tefachim, not including the schach, was together with the Beis HaMikdash that you see that the Kruvim came to a height of 1/3 of the ceiling, and so too the Beis HaMikdash, and the Mishkan also was like that, and it says Sochchin B'Chanfeya, Ala Kaporos, so the height, the maximum of the height, the Kruvim came to the height of 20 tefachim off the ground, and 10 tefachim for the Aron, so you have 10 tefachim for the schach of the wings over the Kaporos, and that was a good Russia. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, that the Aron and the Kaporos together was only 8.5 tefachim. Both these rushes wouldn't work. So the Gemara said, Moshe Messina. So that was the last words that we had. That Rashi Amarav said, Moshe Messina. But now the Gemara is going to challenge it, and the Gemara is going to bring that all these things seem to be the Raisa. Shiurim. We said Shiurim means the measurements for different mitzvahs and punishments. And chatzitza is a chatzitza by going to the mikvah, that there shouldn't be a separation between the skin and the water. And mechitza is what we're talking about, different kinds of halachas or partitions. So it says, Moshe Messina. So the Gemara jumps up now and says, Shiurim means measurements.
Anything?
All kinds of measurements, of halachic measurements. So the Gemara says, Shiurim the Raisa in it. Why do you say that is Rabban? That is Halacha Moshe Messina. It's the Raisa. Halacha Moshe Messina also is the Raisa, but the Raisa means that it's in the Torah. Halacha Moshe Messina means that there's no source in the Torah for it. It's all law with no drush in the Torah. If it's
Rebbe, Rashi says Shiurim means Shiurim shel Isurim dafka.
Okay. The Gemara continues that Shiurim should be the Raisa. It means there is a drush in the pasuk for it. It's not only Halacha Moshe Messina without a source. There is a source. Famous pasuk coming up in the Torah, that Parshas Eikev, that it says the Chashivas of Eretz Yisrael is a land of wheat and barley and grapes, figs, pomegranates, a land of olives which give oil, and Tvash, which is usually translated as honey, but I think that the translation is dates, and we'll see as we come on there.
Dates themselves.
Dates, okay, we'll get that. So anyway, but the Gemara is now going to say that this pasuk is all different shiurim. This whole pasuk is coming to tell you different shiurim, and now the Gemara is going to go through each one of them and say what the shir is. Chita is the first one. Where's the shir of chita? Wheat. The Gemara is going to say that it doesn't mean the size of a wheat berry, but it means rather the bread which is made out of wheat. And the Gemara is going to say that it's easier to eat than other kinds of bread made out of barley, and that's going to be the following din. The Bayis HaMenuga means a house which has a nega, tzaras. And the halacha is that if someone comes into the house, he becomes tameh, and that's going to be the following halacha, that somehow a chita is going to have relevance to this shear of a person becoming tameh. The Tanan. So the pasuk says, that's right here on the bottom. I think Rashi is here. Let's see. Yeah, Rashi. Let's move over a little bit. That's a pasuk in the Torah that if someone goes into the house, he becomes tameh. So if someone enters the house which has a nega, he becomes tameh. This has nothing to do with the person having a nega. Here, the house has a nega. The house has a nega. The person who goes into the house becomes tameh. Here it says if someone goes into a house that has a nega and he's besides himself, he also has clothing, but he's not wearing the clothing, he's carrying it, and he's carrying his shoes, carrying his rings, all kinds of things that could be worn, but he's not wearing them, he's carrying it. He's tamei right away, and they're also tamei right away, and there's no difference between him and them because everything is bala bayis. Whatever came into the house, like it says in the pasuk again, a bala bayis becomes tamei. So here, he was bala bayis, and so were these other things. Everything came into the house, bala bayis.
What about this shiur?
We didn't get to it yet. The next page, the Avav and Aleph, what if he's wearing his clothing and he's wearing his shoes and he's wearing his rings? So then who tamim miyad? That doesn't change. He became tamim because he came into the house immediately. The hain, Tahorim, עד שישב בכדי אכילת פרס, פס חיתן ולא פס אורן, מייסר ואוכל ולפתן. The pasuk over there says, also again, we can look at Rashi again. Rashi brings the pasuk that it says, and also, Vashachei b'bayis yecha beis b'gadav. V'achel b'bayis yecha beis b'gadav. So the pasuk is a little in the pshat world. It would say that if somebody came into the house, he's tummy. If somebody ate in the house or he lie in the house, shachei b'bayis. So then, not only is he tummy, also his clothing is tummy. But the Gemara has a drush to say that not dafka if he eats or if he lies, even if he doesn't, if he's his keilim is begadim also becomes tamei, even if he doesn't eat or lie in the house. So what is the pasuk coming to tell you? That only if he's there, the amount of time that he could have eaten means nothing to do with eating. The pasuk in the pasuk would say dafka if he ate, but the drush says not dafka if he ate, even if he didn't eat, but if he stayed there at the time that he could have eaten a meal, so then his begadim also become tamei. So as the Gemara said a second ago, if the clothing came in on its own, nothing to do, he's not wearing it, the clothing came in, someone brought the clothing in on a hanger on his hand, so then it becomes tummy right away because it was bala bias. But if the clothing is only going to become tummy because of kibbutz begadim, yichabeis begadim, that means that the person became so tummy that even his clothing become tummy, then it's only if he was there at the time that he could have eaten. It's a time factor. It's not an actual eating. So that's how we dash in the pasuk. And now the one is telling you how much is considered eating a meal. So a person came to the house that has an egg. If he stayed there at the time that he could have eaten a meal, so then his clothing also become tummy.
What does a meal mean? Because if it makes some bread.
Oh, now it's going to say what's considered a meal. So it says here, the time that it could have taken to eat in a pras is a half a loaf. How big is the loaf? Some say 8 eggs, the volume of 8 eggs. Some say the volume of 6 eggs, which means achilas pras is either 4 eggs or 3 eggs. The time that he could have eaten 4 eggs worth or 3 eggs worth, of eating what? What kind of bread? That's what it says. Pras chitin. Because wheat bread is easier to eat than barley bread, for instance. So the objective kind of food that we're talking about to eat is wheat bread. And also mesif, also when he's eating in a reclining position, when a person is reclining, he's more concentrating on his eating and he's not distracted. It takes him longer time to eat if he'll be sitting or walking around. When he's reclining, it means he's all into his eating.
Meaning that's the healthiest way to eat.
Doesn't say healthy. Here it talks about the pace of what he's eating.
It's the most relaxed way of eating.
And also he's eating it together with some kind of some kind of accessory that goes.
So Rebbe, in Peshat here, the limud of Ba El Abayis is kolel extra, but the Hilchas of Malosh Misinai is the shear of Shia to limit. Is that correct?
If I could just say it first, and then if you have any questions, that's what I didn't say what it means yet. So the fact that the pasuk says that there's a time that a person would have been in the house long enough to have eaten this amount of food, then his clothing also becomes tummy. What kind of food? Because he's not really eating over here. It's just it's an abstract kind of a shear. Time it would have been to eat a meal. A meal of what? And that it says, it says paschitin, not the, it says this drush of chita is coming to tell you that the shear is the kind of food that he's eating is wheat bread, and also if he's in a reclining position, and also that he's eating it together with something, whatever, something that makes it easy to eat, a dip of some sort, and that's going to be the shear of time that is totally also become tummy. So again, the shear, if a person goes into a house, he becomes tummy right away. If things go into a house, also they become tummy right away. But if they're on the person, they're not considered independent, they're bottled to the person, they only become tummy if the person was there long enough to eat kedei achilas pras of wheat bread, mesa, bochel b'liftan, then the clothing also become tummy. Yes, Rabbi Manuel.
I think you answered my shaila that yes, the Hilchas Halakha L'Moshe Sinai comes to limit the Ba El Abayis to the Zman Shia of Chitin.
That's not the Moshe Sinai. The pasuk says Ochel B'Bayis. The pasuk. First of all, the Gemara is going now no Moshe Sinai. The Gemara is saying that it's a pasuk. The Gemara is going to answer at the end of Moshe Sinai, but so far the Gemara is saying that it's a pasuk. The pasuk says Chita, and Chita is coming to tell you that the pasuk that it says is not the pasuk. It says Ochel B'Bayis, Shachei B'Bayis. So the pasuk says openly that somebody is Ochel B'Bayis, but the other drash told us that Ochel B'Bayis doesn't mean literally. It means a time of eating. And now, what is he eating? So the pasuk says Chita. He's eating Chita. So the Allah is good. And I mean, the
You know
laws are
how long
good.
it is?
What?
Do we know how long it is?
You take a loaf of bread, wheat bread, and take reclining and get a good dip and eat 3 eggs with volume of 3 eggs and see how long it takes. And that's going to be the objective time that's considered ochel. And then he's gonna
That ate a piece of bread, which is probably about 3 kibbetzes, and I forgot the time.
okay, look at the watch next time. But be reclined and make sure that it's chita, and that'll be the share of when the person becomes not when that's be the share of when his kalim become tummy, when his clothing become tummy. Not only the person is right away, the person is tummy right away, but that the kalim, the clothing should become tummy. He's wearing his rings, his shoes, is only if he was there. Kidei achila, what? Kidei achilas pras of paschitim. That's the drash of chita. How about the drash of sorah? We're going to go through the whole zayin meaning. Sorah. What is the share of a barley? Here it does have to do with the quantity of the barley, the size of a barley. A bone of a dead man, the bone, the size of a barley, gives off tumah of magan masa, contact and carrying it. If he touches the bone, or if he carries the bone, even if he didn't touch it, but he carried its weight, he becomes tamei. But in tamei boel, that's because it's in the same oil as a person doesn't make him tamei. Over there, Rashi says that has to be much more. It has to be rob minyan, or it has to be shedriv golas. Certain bones do make tamei in oil, but most bones don't. Only if it's but it does only as to magan masa, and even that the shear is going to be the size of a saora. So that when the pasuk says chita saora gefen, so what's the saora coming to tell you? That the shear, very little, the size of a barley. Geffen, what is Geffen coming to tell you? So Geffen means a grape or a vine, grapes. So it says here, Kedei Revius Shine Nazir. That's coming to tell you the share is if a Nazir is not allowed to drink wine, if he drinks a Revius, that's the share that he's chayav for. There's difficulty in this because it's not telling you a share. The share is Revius, the share is not a Geffen. Until now we have Chita as a share for the quality of eating the bread that he's eating. So it's going to be the size of the barley. Also, the rest of the shum coming up are all going to be the size of a rimon, the size of a taina, the size of a date. But Geffen is not telling you the size of a grape. It's not telling you anything. So that's difficult. We can leave it difficult. And if it's okay, we'll leave it difficult. That the Gemara seems to say that the share is a revius, and that's not hinted in the Geffen at all. So it's just telling you that when the Nazir is not allowed to drink wine, so the share is going to be a revius. It's very difficult because it's not telling you anything about the Geffen. The Geffen is not a share for anything. So Rashi here does say, this is Rashi, what I just said now is Rashi in Erevin. Rashi says it's difficult because it's not giving you a share of anything. Rashi over here says something about measuring a revius. It's the difference if it's the displacement of wine or the displacement of water, because wine is thicker and it has a higher surface tension. It doesn't spill out. The displacement is not as much as water, but it's also quite difficult. We'll leave out the difficulty and just continue going in Gemara. But let's say Rashi Nervin says that it's just telling you that the share of wine is going to be revius, and the pella is, the wonder is that the word geffen is not going to be a share for anything. And the Gemara is trying to say that the whole pasuk is telling you a share. So we'll leave it. It's okay, and continue back on to Gemara. Ta'ina. Yes, please.
All mitzvahs that to do with Geffen require shir, whether it's
but that's
brachas or it's
there's nothing, but it's not telling you. It says here, right? There be a sound of nazir, and it's saying that it's not telling you have to drink wine. It's saying if a nazir that drinks wine, the shir is a revius. But the problem is that Geffen is not being said as shir. If you tell me the share of a grape is a share for something, so then he says it's similar to what's going to say soon. I said already that the Saura is a share for something, Teina is a share for something, Rimun is a share for something, Geffen is not a share for anything. So that's a kasha, and it needs explanation. Everybody's welcome the rest of the day to look into Rashi, Tosfos, all kinds of shatim that they say. But I'll be other Rishonim, Achronim. But it's a difficult Gemara. It needs explanation, and in the scope of our learning, we can't go too deep. So we lost by the Gemara according to Rashi's Pshat and Erevin, and the kashas on it that it's not telling you a share for anything. The next point in the pasuk is Teina. It says a fig. What's a fig a share for? That's the share of how much a person is chayav if he carries out on Shabbos food. How much food is chashuv? That is significant. That he should be chayav for carrying it out on Shabbos. Not allowed to carry anything on Shabbos outside the Rosh Hashanah. But how much is it going to be chayav if it's significant? How much is significant? The size of a dried fig.
Excuse me. Why are you saying carrying out food? Wouldn't it be carrying out anything?
No, I don't think so. Each thing has, that's the whole. Yeah, batuna prakim and Masech Shabbos. I'm mostly this. I'm mostly that. Each thing has. By food, the share is a gorgeros. The share is a dried fig, but other things, but each thing is according to its own significance. And the Mishnah over there, I think, went to the trouble of about 50 examples of different things. How chashuv, which thing? What's the chashivus of each thing? But by food, it's a gorgeros. Let's say animal food is going to be according to what's an animal food. You know, how much is a mouthful of an animal?
Think out loud. food, each food has different amount. A piece of chocolate take out this much.
That's a nice
minimum,
concept.
and
How come
chicken you take out
are
more.
all foods created equal? Some foods are more chashuv than others. Here it says that all foods is gregarious. That's a nice point. I never thought of it. How come all foods are the same? All foods have the same significance. Interesting. Okay. The
It's
next one
not
is
true. The Minchas Chinuch has a whole big thing here on Bigdei Achilas Pras, and it comes out that there's lots of machlokes. Most of the shitas say to judge different foods differently.
You're talking about something else. Abraham was talking about the size of a gregarious to carry out on Shabbos. And the question was that different foods have different significance. You're talking about the Gemara before, which I should have mentioned before. Thank you for reminding me. That before we said a K'dei Achilas Pras is the size that over there is not eating. The K'dei Achilas Pras by the Bais Menuga, if it's okay, we go back a second off the subject. The pasuk Gemara we spoke about how much is K'dei Achilas Pras when someone's not eating. He's not eating. It's an abstract kind of a shear. If he would be eating, what? He's not eating anything. He's just sitting in the Bais Menuga. If he ate there, the time to eat, paschitin. So this Gemara is very much mashma that if someone would actually be eating, let's say he's eating chametz on Pesach, and he could eat chitin or sorin, and he's only chayiv if he eats exercise with the achilas pras. How much is a kedei achilas pras? The Chora Gemara would say that each food seems to have its own kedei achilas pras. That it takes longer to eat barley bread than it does to eat chita bread. So the time lapse that a person would have to be chayiv to eat kazayas, Gemara is mashma that each food goes according to its own way of eating. Some foods are harder to eat. Some foods are easier to eat. So this Gemara seems to be a big proof. There's the Minchas Chinuch in Shin Yud Gimel that says that our Gemara seems to say that each food is judged according to how hard it is to eat. Just a side point that matzah for Pesach, this would be a big leniency. People that you have to eat a kazayis techilas pras make a big kazayis and a short techilas pras. If you say that, first of all, kazayis is the size of an olive, so everyone could be calm on Leil Pesach. It doesn't take a lot to eat the size of an olive of matzah. But here also, techilas pras of the eating matzah. It's much harder to eat a cracker matzah than it is to eat a loaf of fluffy bread. So the techilas pras of matzah, which should be relatively longer, it wouldn't be the same as eating regular bread. It's not an objective shear. It's a subjective shear according to each food. Thank you for mentioning that, Minchas Chinuch. The next point is about Rimo. Yes, please.
So different from Nazi.
What?
Tain is no different from Nazi. There's no riot about it. Just it's in the past.
I'm not following.
You said that with Nazir we had a question, right?
No, because Tain is a shear for something. By Geffen, there's no shear for anything. Geffen, grape, is not a shear for anything. A fig, we're looking for a shearim. So it's a Sora and a Taina, Rimon, everything is a shear. The size is a shear. But by Geffen, it doesn't say a shear for anything. That was the problem we had by Geffen. The next Gemara talk about Taina, that's the size. Revius doesn't say, if we'll say Revius in the past, doesn't say Revius, it says Geffen.
So by Taina doesn't say shear either.
It says Taina. It says Taina. Taina is the shear.
You mean the actual?
Taina is the shear.
The vein, the actual thing.
It is a shear. What is it a shear? It's a shear for something.
But the grape, you don't gauge. It's not being gauged.
It's not being gauged. We're not using the grape as a
Right.
shear for anything. That's the problem we have by Geffen. The next one is about Rimon. Etnan. Here's talking about if you have a kli that is makabel tumah because it's a usable vessel, and it got a hole in it. So is it still considered usable? If it's not usable, then it's thrown in the garbage. It's not anything, not makabel tumah anymore. So over there it says that kli balabatim. Balabatim means a home, somebody at home. In contrast to somebody who has a store and he's selling vessels. If you're selling things in the store, it has a small defect, you can't sell it anymore. But balabatim means somebody is at home and he has a bowl and it got a hole in it, so it's still use it. So usually it says, gets a small hole. Let's say till now it was able to hold small things, raisins. Now it got a hole. Can't hold raisins. Okay, so they use it for grapes. It gets a hole the biggest size of the grapes. They use it for things that are bigger than that. Till it comes a rimon. If it has a hole the size of a rimon, you're not going to hold it anymore. You throw it out already. What am I going to put? Watermelon? What am I going to put inside? A honeydew or something like that? Once it gets the size of a rimon, it's not called useful anymore. That's what it says. The home vessels, homeowners that they have kli that got a hole in it. So the shear that makes it should be torah because it's not called useful anymore is once it's the size of a rimon. That's like a big fruit. It's not a huge fruit, but it's like the biggest of the small fruit. So that would be the size that makes the kli torah. And the next thing in the pasuk is zay shemen, eretz zay shemen, which means olives that produce oil. But here it also says eretz zay shemen l'dvash. So eretz shekol shireh kazaysim. Eretz means like a very general that all the shirim of the Torah are the size of an olive. The Gemara right away jumps in. What do you mean all the shirim? Kol shireh. Does it enter your mind that all the Shurim are his eyes, Ika Hani Daminon. He just had a whole list of things. Chita, Sora, Geffen, Tena, Rimo, not everything's his eyes, the other Shurim also. Ema, Sharov Shir that most of the Shurim, Rashi brings down all these Surim. Rashi talks about Chalev, Dam, Pigo, Nosar, Tame, Giranasha, Mace, many things that have the share of his eyes. You can talk about mitzvahs also, the Chorah. That's what Emmanuel said. That's only talking about Isurim. But the Chorah, you can say mitzvahs also. Matzah, Morah, all these things, the share is of his eyes. So that's what the Pasuk Zayis is coming to tell you, that many mitzvahs have to do with the share of Kazayis. But that's the one that I'm most familiar with, Kazayis, the size of an olive. The Vash is the last one, which means a date. That's the size of somebody to eat on Yom Kippur that shouldn't be considered afflicted. We just had a human now, we just learned it, that the share is not a kazayis, because the pasuk doesn't say do not eat, it says be afflicted. And if somebody eats a kazayis, he's still afflicted. It's called eating, but he still has the affliction of fasting. But when he eats the size of a date, a big date, so then he's already somewhat yishuv adas. So that was the big brisa.
We just learned Kesefas Das. That was by Yom Kippur.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. That's right. That's what it says. So the Gemara is finished. One bekasha so far. How come you say Shurin is Allah Moshe Messina, which means it has no source in the Torah? It has a source in the Torah. Here, the whole pasuk says that this all the Shurim are sourced in the Torah. Alma the Raisa so is the Raisa. Why saying Allah Moshe Messina? Again, as far as being in Torah, the severity is no difference if it's Allah Moshe Messina or it's the Raisa. But the Gemara is saying Allah Moshe Messina means that it has no source in the Torah. It's just plain oral, purely oral. And the Raisa means that it has a source in the Torah. And the Gemara is asking, it has a source in the Torah. This pasuk says all this kind of Shurim, Chita, Sora, Geffen, Tena, everything is a source in the Torah for Shurim. Why are you saying that it's all Allah Moshe Messina? So the Gemara answers back, V'tizbura, Shurim Miksivi. What do you think? It doesn't say the Shiur. It doesn't say.
It's number 4.
Right. It doesn't say Chita is for Baisa Menuga. It doesn't say that Sora is for Etzem. It does say Chita, Sora, Geffen. Ella Hilchos Sanilos. It's really Lachal Moshe Messina. The pasuk is only an asmachta. What does asmachta mean? So somebody should say asmachta means just a mamash a mnemonic. That the pasuk didn't mean that at all. But we would just like the memory devices. So in order to remember these things, so we put it into the pasuk. But the pasuk didn't mean that at all. That's some Rishonim say. Other Rishonim say differently, and the Ramchal goes like that. Maral, I think.
The Ritva is adamant it's Dioraisa. The Ritva in Rosh Hashanah by Shofras, Malchus, and Zechonos is adamant that Asmachta is Dioraisa.
I don't think that. I have to see the side. I don't think that you could say that. Asmachta surely means that it's Rabbanan. Whenever the Gemara says Asmachta, always when the Gemara says Asmachta, it's Rabbanan. The point is to say that the Torah meant to hint it. The Torah meant to hint it, not that we're using it as a hint. The Torah meant to hint it, but it's not a strong enough of a hint to extract from it halacha. But the Torah hinted to it that one day we're going to come and make this halacha. So it's still not the Raisa. If you say that the Ritva says I like to see so, but when the Gemara is saying right here that it's halacha Moshe Messina, that's why it's the Raisa. The pasuk alone wouldn't be a drush at all. The pasuk is only an asmachta. So there are two ways to understand an asmachta. Either we use it as a mnemonic, and the Torah didn't mean that at all, or the Torah meant it as a hint, but it's not a strong enough hint to be able to extract any halacha from it. It's only a way that the Torah foresaw that we're going to say such a thing, and the Torah hinted it in the Torah like anything else is hinted in the Torah. There's also hinted in the
Is
Torah.
that literally what Asmachta means? That it's a hint?
I think the word asmachta means that it's leaning on it, but leaning
leaning
means
on, but it's not before us.
right. So, but there are two ways to understand that. Either we're leaning on it, we took it as a lean, but the Torah didn't mean that, or the Torah meant that you should lean on it, but not that.
I mean, according to that.
Yeah, I think both Shatim say that's not the right stuff. We'll see the Ritva. So that was the first point. That was the question with the answer. The Kashva Shiyun is Halachah Moshe Messina. It's a Fersha pasuk, or not a Fersha pasuk, but it's a Fersha drasha. And the answer is no, it's not a drasha. It's only a smach. That's not a real drasha. The next one, Chatzitzin. The Raisa he said Chatzitzin. The din of a Chatzitza that when someone goes into the mikvah, so a Chatzitza is going to be something separating between him and the water, so it invalidates the immersion. So why are you saying it's Halachah Moshe Messina? The Raisa it's also a pasuk. Tichsid Ruachas B'Mayim Eskol B'Saro. This is the different gersos over there. The main gerso should be brachas b'mayim eskol b'saro, that he should wash in the water all of his flesh, and that from there you learn out that all of his flesh should be in the water. There shouldn't be anything separating. So you might say it's not a Fersha pasuk, but it's a Fersha drasha. There's a drasha over here. So why say it's Halachah Moshe Messina? It is sourced in the Torah that you're not allowed to have a chatzitza. The Gemara answers, the Halachah Moshe Messina has come to tell us that there's a din chatzitza also under here. The pasuk says b'soro. So it says there shouldn't be any separation between the water and its flesh, but here is not flesh. So you wouldn't know that there's din chatzitza on the hair, and they're coming to tell you that there's a din chatzitza on the hair also. and we find that Rabbi Baba Chana spoke about being a chatzitza on the hair. He's going right into details. He's going into intricacies. What's a chatzitza? What's not a chatzitza? But it was a given to him that there's a chatzitza on the hair also. Where does it come from? Allah Moshe Sinai. He was talking about a specific question when a hair is tied. It's a knot in the hair. So is it tied enough that it should be considered a chatzitza? If you have one hair, a strand of hair that has knot in it, it's knotted into itself.
It's like a Shabbos.
Talking about chatzitza.
Yeah, but for Shabbos reasons.
Why are you talking about Shabbos? Talking about chatzitza for a mikvah. We're talking about Shabbos and a mikvah. That is the knot in the hair so tight that the water doesn't penetrate. The water doesn't get in between where the knot is. So he says, Nima. Nima means a hair. Nima is Aramaic for a hair. So one hair that's tied, not in a hair. So that is a tight knot, and the water cannot penetrate in the place where the knot is, and therefore it's a chatzitza. If there are three hairs that are knotted together, with not three individual hairs, each one is knotted in itself. That's considered one. Each one is a tight knot. If you have three hairs that were all looped together into one knot, so that's a loose. Since you have three hairs together, so it's a loose knot, and the water does penetrate. So it's not a chatzitza. Two hairs is question as borderline. Any of that, I don't know. But what do you see? That it was partial to him that there's a din chatzitza by here also. Where did that come from? The pasuk that says besoro. So there's only a din deraisa, and the pasuk it only talks about being a chatzitza on flesh. Who says there's a chatzitza by here at all? So it must be Allah Moshe Sinai. Allah Moshe Sinai says that there's a chatzitza on here also, and he was going into the intricacies. How tight is the hair that it should be considered a chatzitza? The Gemara says no, it's not true. The fact that the hair is a chatzitza is also a pasuk, a drasha. Saranami deraisa in it. The hair that is a chatzitza is also a drasha from a pasuk. Tichsiv v'rachatz es b'soro b'mayim. Besides saying v'rachatz b'mayim is called b'soro, it also says es b'soro. Es atafel b'soro. It could have said v'rachatz b'soro b'mayim, but it doesn't have to say es. The word es is coming to say something which is tafel. Rashi says tafel means that it's the book, something slapped on, something which is secondary. So that also becomes a chatzitza. Mind you, sorrow. The hair means that's not the buzzer itself, but it's tafel of a sorrow. So does the drasha say that the hair also has a din chatzitza? Sakim is saying it's no pasuk. It's only lachol Moshe Sinai. Here you see in the pasuk that it's also there's a source in the pasuk to darshan that there's a din chatzitza on the hair also. So what do you know Moshe Sinai for? The answer is yes. You're right that there's a chatzitza. We know, but there's going to be a certain detail that you need a lachol Moshe Sinai. Tamir Rabbi Yitzchak. Let's go back a second here.
He's going to tell us what it is.
Yes. Tvat Torah. We're on Tavav with base. Tvat Torah with the Raisa, which means Allah Moshe Sinai. Uba Makar Allah Chotzeitz. V'shenet Makar Allah Ein Chotzeitz. That's the Allah Moshe Sinai. Allah Moshe Sinai has to tell us how much is a chatzitza. It's true. We know there's a chatzitza. There's a chatzitza on the flesh. There's a chatzitza on the hair. But how much? So now with the Raisa, now it says that Allah Moshe Sinai told us Uba Ol Makar. Only if it's the majority of the area. And also that he's makbid, that he cares about it. He doesn't want it to be there. But if it wouldn't have these two conditions, it wouldn't be a chatzitza. If it's not robe or it's not makbid, if it's not missing, if it's missing one of these two conditions, it wouldn't be a chatzitza deraisa. That's really the end of the Gemara. But the Gemara is going to tell us more information. We've got a bonus over here. But as far as the question and answer goes, the kasha was that chatzitza is the rice. It's a pasuk. You don't have to have a lachol Moshe Sinai. The answer is you're right. Both on the guf and on the hair, it's a pasuk. But you have to have a lachol Moshe Sinai to tell us that it's only a chatzitza if it's ruba or makbid, the robe of the area, and also that he cares about it. He doesn't want it to be there. And Gemara tells us more information, which is already extra bonus. That they also made rabbanans, but the rice is only ruba or makbid. So there wouldn't be any problem with chatzitza. Only if you have two conditions, ruba or makbid. That's a big thing. Ruba, most of the body. Only if the chatzitza is covering most of the body, and only if he cares about it. He doesn't want it. But they made it the exer rabbanan. Even if it's missing one of the two conditions, rubo alone or makbid alone. Rubo, even though he's not makbid, and makbid, even though it's miyuta. If he doesn't want it, that's most of our chatsitzas are usually going to be that it's a miyata makbid, that it's not on the robe, it's not the robe of his body, but he doesn't want it. So that's rabbanan. And also the other way, if it will be rubo, even though he's not makbid, also will be mirabbanan. And that's the halacha, that if it's rubo makbid, if it has both conditions, then the rice is going to be a chatzitza. If it's only one of the conditions, rubo, and not makbid, or makbid and not rubo, then it's only rabbanan. But if it's a miyat she'ena makbid, if it's only a minority, and also he's not makbid, doesn't care about it, then it's not chatzitza at all. The Gemara says, why did they not make a rabbanan on that also? Well, top line over here, You made it Rabbanan because it's similar in one way. But now that once you made the Rabbanan, so now what do we say? That Niyat Hamakbid, the Rubo Shena Makbid is already Rabbanan. So my wife and I goes also on Miyat Shena Makbid. Miyat Shena Makbid is have two things going for you. That both it's not the robe and also he doesn't care about it. And it says it's not even a Chatzitza Rabbanan. Why not? You could have said that it's similar to Makbid. Miyat Shena Makbid is similar to Miyat Makbid. Since Miyat Makbid is going to be a Chatzitza Rabbanan, so it goes already, even if it's going to be a Miyat Shena Makbid, even if it has neither of the two, but it's similar because you already goes there on Miyat Makbid. So Miyat is sometimes a Chatzitza when it's Makbid. So he goes there also another step. Or you can say Ruba Shena Makbid is also a Chatzitza Mirabanan. So why we not go there also Miyat Shena Makbid? The Gemara answers, the famous answer, you go for Gzeira, but I make him Gzeira. We don't make a Gzeira toward the Raisa. We don't make a Gzeira toward the Rabbanan. So with the Raisa, if you have both conditions, Ruba or Makbid, so we'll make a Gzeira Rabbanan if it has one of those two. So either Ruba or Shena Makbid or Miyat Makbid. But if you have something which is only Rabbanan already, the Miyat Makbid or the Ruba Shena Makbid is only Rabbanan. So to make a Gzeira on a Gzeira, that's too much. We don't make a fence on a fence. So therefore, we didn't make a Gzeira on a Miyat Shena Makbid.
That's the Torah Shemashim.
The Lach Moshe Messina is the first line. That Ruba Makbid, that's the only the Raisa. You don't. The Lach Moshe Messina is not telling you how to make Rabbanans. The Lach Moshe Messina is telling you what's the Raisa. So it says that the Lach Moshe Messina is that it's only a problem when it's Ruba Makbid. Top line. Ruba Makbid, that's the Raisa. Rashi says over there, the Torah Allah Moshe Messina. That's Allah Moshe Messina. I tell you that only if it's Ruba Makbid. That's a leniency. Without that Allah Moshe Messina, we would say anything is a Chatzitza is a Chatzitza.
Because it has to be both conditions.
That's all the Raisa told us. The Allah Moshe Messina told us that only if it has these two conditions, this is going to be a Chatzitza the Raisa. And the Gemara twin already that they did make a Rabbanan if it has one of the two conditions. But if it has neither of the two conditions, then it's not even a Chatzitza Rabbanan. The poskim say that the Chatchila is better to get rid of a Miyat Shena Makbid also, but that's like a minhag. We try to, but if you can't, so it's not a Chatzitza if it has both. If it has neither of the two conditions.
An example of a Chatzitza on the roof of the roof, like oil or something.
Where's it going to be
I'm
unrolled?
asking you, what is a Chatzitza? That we're talking about.
Anything which sticks to the goof in a way that the water doesn't get through. Oil usually put that on. You want it to be there. You want it to be there, and it gets in.
The Torah told us with hair. One hair is different from three hairs.
I'm asking for the Chatzitza.
The Chatzitza will be if it's very tight, if the water doesn't get in.
I've drawn his hand on it with a pen.
A pen is that there's no real ink over there. It's just considered a Chatzitza. They say it's not tar, these kind of things, something sticky.
That sticks.
And the other example, the Gemara said before, it would be like Rabbi Manuel said that if the tear is tied into itself in a way that the water doesn't get in, it's a chatzitza because the water doesn't penetrate. The other case you're talking about is that something sticking on it. You get something sticky on his hand, so then also it's going to be a chatzitza. They talk about ink. If you're using ink like a real ink well once upon a time, so then there's ink. But if it don't, mamish. But if it will be just what we call ink mark, so then there's no mamashes. It's just a change of color, but there's nothing, no substance over there. So they say it's not a chatzitza.
Not only that, it's not. He's not going to get to your roof.
So it's makbid. We said mirabana. If you have one condition, it also will be a mirabana. So you have to be careful for. And also, as far as the Tilas Shadayim, it doesn't have to be rubo of the whole goof. It's going to be rubo of the hand, probably. Probably when you're talking Tilas Shadayim, you just look at the hand area alone. The hair, you look at the hair alone, you're not the whole body. The hair alone will be a chatzitza for most of the hair. Okay. The next one, mechitzin. We said the third thing was mechitzin. That mechitzin is lochem Moshe Messina. And the Gemara is the kasha here that it's how come it's not how the Gemara is analyzing what's lochem Moshe Messina about a mechitzin. Hold on a moment. We said that there should be 10 tefachim high, the schach, the wall. So that's the lochem Moshe Messina. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that doesn't have the source of the Oren Bekaporis. You have to learn it out from lochem Moshe Messina. But the Gemara says that's only Rabbi Yehuda. Not Rabbi Yehuda that he has to have lochem Moshe Messina because he didn't have the source from the Torah. Rabbi Meir says that Adoni lochem Moshe Messina. It's a source in the Torah because the Oren Tesha, the Kaporos Tefach, altogether is 10, and you see a Mechitza is 10 Tefachim, and also that the Kruvim altogether were 20 off the ground. That means that the wings were hovering over 10 Tefachim on the Kaporos. So he has a source for all that. So why do you lochem Moshe Messina? The answer is Ki Asayil Chasal Legod or Beloved. There are other kinds of halacha Moshe Messina as far as the mechitza goes. Not the fact that it has to be 10 tefachim. 10 tefachim, Rabbi Meir says, I know from the pasuk. But there are other things. Goad means to draw, to pull. good achis, good asik. There are different kinds of halachic mechitzas that you wouldn't know by yourself, and you have to have halacha Moshe Messinai. Lavud means it's not something within 3 tefachim is considered filled in, and Ofen Akuma is what we had before, that sometimes the schach, the roof, could be considered an extension of the bent wall, and even though its schach is not next to the wall, this bent wall will consider that the schach is touching the wall. And those things, Ramey also doesn't know, he has to have halacha Moshe Messinai in order to tell you that. So far we learned one sugya. The sugya was about shiurin, chatzitzin, and machitzin, and the statement was said that all halacha Moshe Messinai. The Gemara had conscious that the Gemara told each one of them has already a pasuk that has a drash. You don't need halacha Moshe Messinai. And the Gemara answered all of them. No, there are some things that don't have a pasuk. You need halacha Moshe Messinai. Shiurin, the Gemara said all of them. Chita Sarah Geffen doesn't say anything over there. It's only das asmach that there's no source for the pasuk over there at all. Chatzitza, the Gemara said one halacha that we do know this is a chatzitza with the raisa, but we wouldn't know that Ruboy Amakbit. That was halacha Moshe Messinai. And the last one, Mechitza, according to everybody, you have to have good gold and love and Dafan Akum. You need halacha Moshe Messinai. And somehow, Rabbi Yehuda even needed to tell you 10 tefachim is also. You need the halacha Moshe Messinai to tell you 10 tefachim also.
Who said that it doesn't apply? There's Rabbi Yehuda said it doesn't apply.
What is it? What does it apply? No. He also, everyone uses God, the love of Akum. We have to have a halacha Moshe Sinai. Rabbi says that even for the halacha of 10 tefachim, that a mechitza is 10 tefachim, and the schach has to be 10 tefachim off the ground, you also need a halacha Moshe Sinai. I wouldn't be able to learn it out from the pasuk. But Meir says that I can learn it from the pasuk because I know the Oren is 9 and the Kaparis is 1, and the whole question we had yesterday, that is enough of a source according to Rabbi Meir to learn out that the schach has to be 10 tefachim off the ground, the mechitza has to be 10 tefachim. So for that he doesn't need a halacha Moshe Sinai. But for these other halachas, he also needs a halacha Moshe Sinai. It's good. Next Gemara, it says the Mishnah, the Mishnah said that you have to have at least 3 walls, and if you don't have 3 walls, so the sukkah is possible. But not so simple. You don't have to have 3 full walls. The third wall doesn't have to be a third wall. You have to have 2 full walls, but the third one is enough to have only a tefach. Tomorrow's Gemara, we'll talk about more details about this one tefach. But today's Gemara is just going to say the concept that you don't need a full 3 wall. The third wall can be a tefach only. Reb Shimon Omer, no, you have to have 3 full walls and even more. Reb Shimon Omer shlosh kil chasan or vis afil tefach. You have to have 3 full walls, and even the 4th wall, you have to have a bit of the wall. You have to have a tefach on the 4th wall. So that's a machlokes. According to Tanakh, that's how we paskin. That's enough to have 2 in a tefach. According to Reb Shimon, you have to have 3 in a tefach. And the rest of mine today is just going to talk about the drushes, where do they get it from? But my kinufli, what is the machlokes between Reb Shimon and Rabbanan? Rabbanan Savi, Yeshem l'mesoris. Reb Shimon Savi, Yeshem l'mikra. Rabbanan Savi, Yeshem l'mesoris. Basukos, Areka Narba. He goes on, so I'll just translate a little bit. The word mesoris means the way the Torah is written. The way mikra means the way the Torah is read. And that means when you're missing a vav, and you read it anyway, as if it will be a vav, a cholam, so that's called a difference between mesoris and mikra. Here for instance, here it says here basukos. It's really read basukos. Rashi brings the psukim. Let's go over to Rashi a second. Rashi's going to tell us the psukim. Here's the Rashi. Basukos teishvu. That's one pasuk. Another pasuk is yeshvu basukos, and the third pasuk is ki basukos hashafti. And the first two are written without a vav. The third one is written with a vav. And that the Gemara is going to say, do you darshan it without the vav as if it will be singular? The word without a vav sounds like it could be understood sukkos, the sukkah of, which is only one sukkah. Sukkos is plural. So if you read it the way it says it, so then if you darshan it the way it says it, then it's going to come out 2 singulars and 1 plural. If you darshan it the way you read it, then it's going to be 3 plurals because all of them are read sukkos. So that's going to be the source of the machlokes. What's the Gemara going to say? That each one of these sukkos, the idea of the sukkah is talking about how many walls you need in the sukkah. So let's see the drasha inside. Rabbanan Savi Yeshem l'Mesoros. Rabbanan darshan the way that it's written. Reb Shimon Savi Yeshem l'Mikra. Reb Shimon darshan is the way that it's read. The word aim means a mother. Rashi says that means the ikr. I'm not sure why that's the translation for the word, but it means the main point is what is written, or the main point is what is read. Of course, everybody agrees how you're supposed to write it. Everybody agrees how you're supposed to read it. But as far as the drasha goes, what are you darshan? Do you darshan the way it's written? Do you darshan the way it's read? Rabbanan Savi Yeshem l'Mesoros. Rabbanan say you darshan according to the way it's written. How is it written? Basukos. 2 singulars, 1 plural. Areka Narba. So if you take 2 singulars, that's 2, and 1 plural is another 2, is 4 altogether. Areka Narba. So now what do you do with this 4? So Dal Chad Legufe. One of them you have to subtract because you have to say the pasuk at least 1 time. They have drushes, you don't have to say it so many times because you said it 1 time, but 1 time you have to say it. So 1 time doesn't count. what do you have left? 3. Bashalut lasa. So then they have 3 left, 3 walls. And now, shtaim kil chasan. So that would have told us that you have to have 3 walls. But now, shtaim kil chasan, v'asayil chasav, v'gerasa l'shlichis, v'matapach. The halacha Moshe Messina came to tell us that you don't have to have a full wall. 1 wall is going to be minimized. So if we would have dashed with them in 3 walls, now the halacha Moshe Messina told us that 1 wall is minimized to a tefach, so it comes out 2 and a tefach. But Rav Shimon says, Yeshem Lamikro, you dash according to the way that's written. How is it written? I'm sorry, the way it's read. How is it read? Plural. Basukos, basukos, basukos. Each one is plural. And each one is plural means 2. So 2 times 3 is 6. Arekan Sheish is if you have 6 walls. Of course, you don't have 6 walls. One pasuk has to be used in order to say the word sukkahs 1 time at least, and that's already 1 plural word. So 1 plural word goes off. So take away 2. Pashalu arba. So you have 4 left. Well, you only have the other 2 words, basukos, basukos. So you have 4. Shalosh kil chasim v'asil chosag. The rest of the V is v'kmosat tefach. So if you have 4, the pasuk would have said that you have 4 walls. So now the Hamash Messina said one of the walls can be minimized to a tefach. So that's the first drasha. The first way to explain the machlokes of Shimon and Rabbanan is if you dash in the Soros or Mikra, that the Rabbanan dash in the Soros, so they get a total of 3 walls, and therefore the Hamash Messina minimizes the last one to a tefach. Rav Shimon dashes the way it's read, and that comes out to be 4 walls.
Which
And
is
the
what,
Hamash
2 times sukkos and 1 time in the sukkos with the vav?
each piece, all of them, if again,
All
Rav
of
Shimon,
them come to 4.
yes, Rav Shimon says each one is besukos, each one is plural, but the first one is legufe. You have to say at least 1 time. You can't dash in the first time. So you have 2 left, 2 basukos, 2 times plural, that's 4. And now you have 4 walls, and the Rosh Messina comes to tell you that 1 wall is minimized to a tapa. That's the first explanation of the drasha. Is that good? Anybody want to repeat? Yeah. Okay, repeat. So the pasuk says 2 times singular and 1 time plural. If you do the way that it's written, if you do the way it's read, it says 3 times plural. Everybody holds you have to take away the first pasuk. The first pasuk you can't dash because it has to say it at least 1 time. It has to say it. So you need a sukkah. So if you dash it according to Rabbanan, you take away the first pasuk and you have 1 singular and 1 plural. That's 3 altogether. And now the halacha Moshe Messina says 1 wall can be minimized to a tefach. So you get 2 in a tefach. According to Rab Shimon, it says 3 times plural. The first one you take off because that's at least 1 time. So you have 2 times plural. That's 4 walls altogether. And now the pasuk of halacha Moshe Messina says that 1 of them can be minimized to a tefach. That was the first Russian. Ibo is saying, if you want, I can say another teretz. The kul yam musar yeshem l'mikra. Everybody holds the dash in the way that it's read, which would have ended off, as we just said, it would have ended off that you have 4. Reb Shimon is the one who would have made sense. If you hold yeshem l'mikra, you would have had 4, and 1 would have been minimized to a tefach, 3 in a tefach. In this drasha, we're talking about how many walls you have. You also have to have a pasuk to tell you need schach also. And of course, if you need a schach, that's 1 less. So yeah, it's true. You start off with 4. But now the opponents say 1 is for the schach, and you have 3 left, 3 walls. Now 1 is minimized to a tefach. Reb Shimon says you don't need the pasuk to tell the schach. That's what the sukkah means. That's pasuk that you have to have schach. So now when it says 4, you have 4 walls, and then you don't have to take 1 away, 1 for the schach. And then you have 3 in a tefach. Ibo is saying a third possibility. The kuli yalma yeshem l'masaras. Everyone holds that the way that is written, which would mean that you ended up with only with 2 in a tefach. That's the way the Moradash until now. But now, everybody agrees with the pasuk. You would have had 3 walls, and then there's the halacha Moshe Messina was coming to change something. So was it coming to change, as we said till now, to minimize, or was it coming to add on? So till now we said that it's coming to minimize. They said 3 walls. Now the halacha Moshe Messina says 1 of the walls could be a tefach. But according to Rav Shimon, the halacha Moshe Messina was coming to add on that you have 3 walls, 1 more tefach also. That's the third possibility in the machlokes. Right. And that was the machlokes. Right. And now a 4th possibility.
If so, this would be an exception to the Rosh and Baba Kama, who has a cloud that Hilchos is always Ligareya and never to be Mosif.
Okay. Ibo Isema, the Kul Yam Kiasa Hilchos Ligareya, Vieshem the Masoros, Vacha Badarshan, Tilos Kamiflagi. Now the Gemara assumed the whole time that the first time that you have to say it, you can't dash in it, but you have to say at least 1 time. But now the Gemara is saying that's so simple. It could be, even though we have only said it 1 time, you can't dash in it, but once it says it more than 1 time, then maybe in retrospect, we're also supposed to count the first ones also. So that's for the possibility. Everyone holds you only start off with what do we say? Yeshen Masoris, which would have come out, you would have had 3, and Hilchos Alagareya. The Allah Moshe is coming to tell you take one down, but some hold, Rav Shimon holds that you could dash in the first one also. So you don't have to, you don't take off the first one. You had Basukos. So you have altogether the darshan Tchilas means you could dash in the first one also, and then you have 4 walls altogether, and the Allah Moshe minimizes 1, and you only have 3 on the tefach. And the last Rasha, 5th Rasha, Rav Matana Amar time of Rav Shimon the pasuk that Rav Shimon mentions is the pasuk in Yishai which we had in the beginning of the Masechta. The sukkah till it's al yom mechorev v'asal mistam mizer mumimata. That the sukkah of Yisrael Yishai v'asal lova v'asal Mashiach, but it says that the sukkah is going to be for a shade of the day from heat, and for a shelter, and for a concealment from a torrent and from rain. So the pasuk in Kitzur is saying that has to be protected. And if you have a sukkah which is going to be 2 walls, then the tefach, it's not protected. And even 3 walls is not protected because the 4th wall is open. So the pasuk says the sukkah has to be 4 walls. And not Allah Moshe Sinai might take away 1 wall. But say that it's going to be open and it's going to be 2 tefachim, 2 walls and a tefach, that's mamish. 3 walls also was open to the elements. So if the pasuk says the sukkah has to be protected from rain, so then it has to be that you have not more than 3 walls and a tefach. So
I mean, I like to just say a caution. You could just say sukkah. This is talking about Latid Lavo. It's not talking about the mitzvah sukkah.
okay, the Gemara said this about that. The Gemara said that in the beginning of the Masechta, the Gemara said some argument on this and says pasuk also it's not talking, or it's coming to say that that's what a sukkah is. That definition of a sukkah is that it's this is a protector. That's what it's come to define what a sukkah means. It's tight word. What does sukkah mean? If that's what it means, that's protective. So it has to be protected. And 2 walls and a tefach don't protect. But we do pass like the Rabbanan, even though we had all the drushes, 4 or 5 drushes to explain what the machlokas is about. We pass like the Rabbanan, whatever the drush is going to be, and 2 walls and a tefach is good enough. And tomorrow we're going to continue where it says, we're stopping over here, and 3 lines. How do you put that tefach? You have 2 walls that are going to be. We'll see if it's going to be perpendicular. We'll see how you're going to have these 2 walls. And tomorrow's Gemara is going to be, where do you put that 3rd tefach?
Most of the nation makes it 3 or even 4.
The Rov that means a lot of people. It doesn't mean
More than the majority. More than half.
okay.
That's just
He's saying what was the Rov coming in?
because most Am Israel doesn't do 2 and a tefach. Most
Okay.
Am does look for more than that. Try to do.
It says it's better to make that it should be without many leniencies, without many not to use the leniencies if possible. And all,
Rebbe, do you want to hear the Ritva?
yes, please.
The Ritva says in Rosh Hashanah Tez Zayin Amud Aleph, Cholek al Rambam, Ze v'kasav she'inyan asmachta eino l'zikron ba'alma, ela sh'hatorah he'ira sheroi la'asos kein. HaTorah he'ira sheroi la'asos kein. Below cover, rakrega, below cover es hadavar l'choiva u'masar hadavar l'chachamim ad kan token devarim.
Okay, so that's what I said. Not the way you said it. It's not the you said before that.
No, listen to the hemshek. The af misug yasenu yesh lomar shatorah amra sheyesh lekvoa es shiurei haTorah al pi minim elu umasra haTorah es hadavar l'chachamim kol halacha v'halacha ke'ezeh shiur yesh lenogba. But this is given over as he's saying that as makta, though it was given over to Rabbanim, it doesn't go out of the getter of the Araisa to the Rabbanan.
No, not true. The Gemara Bas is saying that's Allah Moshe Messina. That's why it's the Raisa. The fact that the person is an asmachta, that's just a hint. Either the point was the 2 choices. What I said, the choice is either we Rabbanan, we're going to look in the pasuk. Where's a nice hint for this? That we're making up the hint. The Torah didn't mean it. We're going to find a nice remez, which is like that the asmachta is nothing really. The Torah didn't mean it. We're just looking for a memory device. Because the Ritva says no, that the Torah meant to hint it, but it's not hinting it that it comes to rice. It's not the rice at all. That's what Agamar says. But Agamar says these things are Allah Moshe Messina. The reason why it's the rice is because Allah Moshe Messina, not because of the asmachta. The asmachta is to remember. Either the Rambam that we use it as an asmachta, or the Torah meant to hint it that I know one day you're going to figure it out and look at it. But you're going to ones who are going to. But here the Gemara says Allah Moshe Messina. No, asmachta is not the rice.
I've heard it twice now from Rav Michal and Rav Rosner, both the way I said it. So the only thing I have left to do is I really have to go back into the Sugi in Rosh Hashanah and see how it's brought down Klape Shofras Malchios V'Zechronos, because that's the Makor here.
I don't think so. And if you could somehow listen to it again or send me what you heard, I would be very surprised if anybody says that Asmachta is Daraisa. It's impossible. But I'd like to hear if somebody says that. Yashikar.
Ruchtia.
Thank you. Okay, looking forward.